The anime begins with the selection of a tutor by the Gronsreich royal family, whose job is to groom the royal princes and is called the Royal Tutor. The Royal Tutor reads the ledger, and the king tells him in the letter that he was appointed to teach the princes and groom them because, to him, they were still unfit for kingship. Ting has been blessed with 5 sons and a daughter and knows very well that they are not a perfect fit for the throne yet. So he asked him to teach them. The tutor's name is Heine Wittgenstein. Heine almost looks like a child, but he's very sharp-minded. He enters the castle and the guards stop him. He tells them that he was a royal tutor. Then the queen, who knows about his arrival, comes there and takes him inside. She tells him that all the royal teachers have resigned so quickly. They stop before a room, and the queen says that all the princes are waiting for him. He opens the door. There's darkness in the room. Suddenly light comes in. Prince Leonhard comes forward and introduces himself. Then he asks not to expect this attitude from them because they don't accept any of his orders. Heine is impressed by their beauty and looks. Leo tells him that he hates all the tutors. The other prince comes and holds him in his arms because he thinks that he's like a child. The third prince comes and stops his brothers. He's a brilliant student among all of them, and he asks about Heine's education. His tone changes when Heine tells him that he never goes to a university. The next prince, Kai Von, is very angry, and everyone is too scared for him. He stares at Heine with his cold eyes. After this strange meeting, Heine says he wants to take an introduction from them so he can learn how to teach each of them. He also warns them that he will do his job at any cost. They refuse and go away, but Leonhard stays there, and he tells Heine why he doesn't accept any tutors. He takes Leo's interview and reads his diary. He also takes a test from the prince. Heine sends the prince's favorite dish to him and goes to the next prince, Bruno von. Bruno is 16 years old and is very intelligent and able in the fields of sociology and philosophy. The tutor comes to him and says he has come to take his test. Bruno attempts the test in no time and surprises Heine. The prince gives him many challenges, but the tutor passes all the challenges given to him, like music, history, luck challenges, etc. They both impress each other with their qualities and abilities. Bruno apologizes to Heine, saying that he is the most respectable person in his life. Then the 5th prince, Leech, comes there and takes Heine with him. He is 14 years old, very handsome, and has a cheerful personality. He's popular among women. He takes Heine to his room and calls the girls to show them the child master. He meets with his friend, and then Heine gives him a competency test and asks him to come to the reception hall at 4 o'clock. Heine also tells him to talk seriously with him because he has a non-serious attitude towards him. He says don't waste his time. The girls are looking at him, and they all say bye. Then he goes to the 2nd prince, Kai, who is 17 years old. He is visibly rare in public and is famous for his violent temper. Prince is not in his room. He goes outside, talks with him. Heine gives a competency test to the prince, and he takes it. The prince says he always talks to everyone like that, but he is good at heart. Heine thinks he's as gentle and mature as the 2nd prince. Princess Adele also comes, meets him there, and takes the dog named Shadow with her. Heine thinks he wrongly assumed him to be the most terrible prince. Heine says secondhand information is unreliable. One should look and feel for oneself, and one could not know anyone without coming face to face with them. Then he goes back from there. Tutor Heine arrives in hall. Bruno comes to Leonhard and says there are only a few minutes left before the master's training begins. Leonhard is surprised to hear the word master from Bruno. Bruno tells him that by spending time with him, he comes to know the master is truly very intelligent. Leonhard says he didn't accept him and runs from there. Bruno comes to Heine and says sorry to master for being late. Heine says he's not late and asks him to stop calling him master. Then Prince Licht comes there and says, Heine, darling, and Bruno says he should apologize for his disrespect to the professor. They are fighting, and Prince Kai reaches there and rebukes them for fighting with each other. Kai says they are both good boys, and then they apologize to Kai. They say to Kai that he's the mediator between his brothers. Heine says their lecture is about group study, but they have to cancel because Leonhard is not with them. Bruno runs fast, but sees that Leo is at the door. He tells them that they all don't like royal tutors, so why do they all come there? They are just like traitors. All the princes tell him that they like Heine. Leonhard gets 1 point on the test and runs from there. This is not the study he hates. It's also the teacher he hated. Bruno tells them that their first royal guard was very strict and taught him, and he used to run and think that teachers were the enemy. Heine is after him and says he will teach him that teachers are not enemies. Then he talks with Leo and says he has many qualities, and he will polish them. It's very late in the forest. Leonhard calls horses to get them back, but they don't come. Bruno is very upset with them. They arrived before morning and came back. The next morning, Heine goes to Leonhard, and he says it is their lesson time. Heine still thanks the princes for coming at the exact time and tells them to visit the town today, so they will come to know the common people's lives. Prince Lich is very happy, but Prince Leonhard refuses to go, and Heine agrees with him. Princess Adele and the Queen say goodbye to them and ask them to be careful. When they reach the town, Lich is very happy and tells his brothers that he visited all the places where he used to go with his friends, but they lost there. Heine tells about the ring road, the main road of the town. He tells them to go to different places and buy the things they want. Leonhard is very nervous and goes to the store to buy a doll. Bruno purchases some books from the bookstore. Then they eat a meal there and like it. In the evening, they decide to go back, but some thieves come there and take away the bag of an old lady. Leonhard is going to catch the thief, but Prince Kai stops him and says he has already taken the bag from the thief. Then the guards came there to take them with him. While sitting in the carriage, they look at the places where they visit, and Heine brings them to learn the lesson. Heine says they are kings in this kingdom who shine a light on the history of the kingdom, and they never forgot the legacy. Their father worked hard to make all this happen. The princes say they will do this. Kai says he wants safety in their kingdom, and peace is very important. They discuss things there, and when they come back home, all the princes give him a surprise at dinner made by them. They give him gifts, and he thanks them for their grateful welcome. At night, he's sleeping and thinking about them. A guard comes and tells Heine that the king is calling him and the princes to talk. Heine is very nervous, and princes are also waiting for the king there. They meet with King, and he thanks Heine for grooming his sons, and then he talks about their report in test arms and discusses many things there. Heine is very impressed by the highness of King and his love for sons. Leonhard is a little disappointed because his father is unhappy with him due to his weakness in studying. The king asks him to get 60 marks in 3 days. Otherwise, he will be removed from the kingship. Heine says not to worry. He will do his utmost to help him in the days to come. Then his brothers encourage him to believe that he can do it. They urge him to get 60 points in the test and show his father. They ask him different questions, and he answers them. Suddenly, Leicht asks how he can pass the test in only 3 days. He again starts crying. Heine conducts a test with Prince Leonhard, and he gets 15 points. He's very worried that his father will abandon him if he doesn't get 60 points on the test tomorrow. Heine tells the other princes to go back to their rooms because it's too late to leave this to him. Heine says it is not difficult to study. If he gets 15, then he can also get the other 45 points. So the next day, they go to King, and the test starts there. After 1 hour, Heine checks the test and gives him 59 marks. All the princes are happy that he got 59 points, but the king says he didn't get 60 points because the proofreader didn't add 1 mark of writing. Thus, he gets 60 marks and is very happy. At night, Heine comes to the king taking wine for him. They talk about Heine's condition to join the position of Royal Tutor. Heine goes to a coffee shop and is surprised to see that the waiter looks like Prince Leicht. He serves him sweets and tea. The waiter enters the room and becomes happy for fooling Heine. He's Lich, who works in a cafe as a waiter. When Heine is going, he gives a chit to the waiter. He reads the letter. It's written to meet him in his room, Prince Lich. Then King comes there, and he also recognizes him and silently says to meet him in his room. Prince is very afraid and comes back home. Heine and Prince ask him the reason, and he tells him that first he does this as a game, then he finds it interesting. He also says that his father doesn't care about him and doesn't come to look at him because he is the 5th prince who never becomes king. He runs from there to the cafe, and King and Heine also come behind him. The owner of the cafe comes out, and the king says he wants to do a job here for a few hours to understand his son. The owner hires him for a few hours. Leicht is very angry and doesn't want to, but he is satisfied that the king will be kicked out when he isn't well. But the king does very well, and everyone is happy and impressed by him. The owner tells King to join them for a few more minutes. At night, King says sorry to Leicht because he didn't pay attention to him well. He says if his job is there, then it should become a scandal that may hurt his throne position. Then the king goes from there and leaves the D on Heine to protect him. Heine says to Leicht that he's very serious for his age. Leicht tells him to stop, and he goes from there and thanks him.
Heine says they will talk about certain problems, and they have to answer him as a king. Leonhard gives him an answer, and the king also likes it. Bruno is standing there. When he was little, he looked at his father's work and wanted to be like him when he grew up. But soon he starts hearing that Prince Heinz will become the next king. He works hard, but the assumption has not changed about the king. Heine comes to him and gives his test to him. That is not so good. Heine says he knows that something is distracting him, but he doesn't force him to tell. Heine gives him an assignment to complete in 2 weeks and also asks what kind of kingdom he wants to create in the future. Bruno works hard, completes the assignment, and then gives it to the professor. Heine likes it very much and says his thoughts have become deeper than before. Bruno is on stage and gives his presentation, but he thinks that he's not like Prince Heinz. People like Bruno's speech, and they become his fans and are behind him to give them another lecture. Dr. Dimitri also comes to him. He offers him dinner, and they eat dinner together and talk to each other. Professor Heine is waiting for Prince Bruno because he is late. Those guys ask Bruno to leave the kingdom because he can't become king, because his brother is waiting for the position of the next king. He has to become a scholar, so they give their address to Bruno. Bruno is sitting outside, and Heine comes to him and says it is his own life and he can make his own decisions. He goes to Dr. Dimitri, who gives him copies of the papers he wrote. Then they go from there, and Dr. Bruno appreciates his presentation. Heine comes there to protect him, and Bruno says he will follow him his entire life. Prince Kai says to Heine that he needs his help, and then other princes also come there. Prince Kai says that the king asked him to correct his communication style with others. Heine says he observes him. He can communicate better. Kai says his behavior is good with family, but when he meets strangers, he doesn't know how to communicate with them. Heine says he will coach him, and the other princes say they will also help him. Then Princess Adele says she wants to go to the zoo to find her new animal friend. They all go to the zoo, and Kai tries to smile, but everyone runs from there to see his dangerous smile. They feed the animals and tell Bruno to bring more food from the servant, but he can't. Adele cannot find any friends and misses Shadow. Shadow also comes there, and they become friends again. Then Heine asks Kai to start a conversation with palace staff. Then he starts a conversation with the girls, but they run to see him. Then he helps a maid, and she's very glad. It's the best communication tool to help others. Kai starts helping the staff, and they are very impressed by him. Then he comes back to the professor and his brothers and says he doesn't want to scare people and hurt them. Then he lay down on the grass. A girl comes and gives him a shawl and tea, then runs from there to see him. Kai is sitting, and the girl comes to change his bed sheets. He thanks her for this and for tea, and she becomes very happy. Kai is sitting with Heine when a girl comes and tells him that the king is calling them. They go, and King shows them the news about Prince Kai and Bruno in the newspaper, in which they're criticized, especially Kai, for spreading violence. Kai says that in military school he sees a lot of injuries on Bruno's body, but he says that it's due to practice. One day, Bruno gets late, and Kai comes after him to check. He sees a student named R is beating Bruno. Kai attacks R and says how he dares to hurt Prince Bruno, and then he is suspended from school. Kai decides to go to Fux to talk with him. He assures Heine that he will never raise his hand against him. Heine will accompany him and say he may insult or hit him, but be patient. They take permission and go. They knock on the door, and Heine says Prince Kai wants to talk with him regarding the article that's been published. Kai asks him why he used to beat Bruno, and he says that he feels jealous of him, and that he's brilliant and belongs to the royal family. Then they feel sorry for this, and Kai also apologizes to him. They read his article, and then suddenly they attack Heine and Kai and catch them in strips. But he remembers his promise to the professor and everyone else not to raise his hand. Fux again tries to attack, but Heine saves him. They escape from there, and Heine fights with them all to save Prince Kai. Rosenberg says to Heine that he wants to talk with him, but Heine says he's busy. He takes Heine into the carriage, and they talk with each other. He says he heard about Professor Heine from his cousin Maximilian. He says that all the princes are very close to him. He tells Heine to keep princes away from the throne. When they reach Leonhard, he is standing there. Rosenberg says he also knows that Heine tutored the children in church before coming there, and he's not from their side. Leonhard hears all this. He asks Heine, but he says he can't tell him the reason. Then he goes to Bruno, who is teaching small children. They are quite happy, and then Bruno tells Heine that her sister, Princess Adele, says he should teach her. He gathered many children to teach and wanted to teach 1 million people. Heine says he's very excellent, and he likes his method very much. Kai wants to go back to military school, but his father is against it. Then Leonhard tells his brothers about Heine, saying that he's not on their side, but they don't know its meaning. Bruno says he searched for him but couldn't find him in history. They go to him to ask, but they cannot say anything before him. Heine's working, and they see a box about which Heine says it is private. They open it and read a letter, and they find gifts inside, given by them. They suggest cleaning his room, but the entire room is dispersed by themselves, and they again clean it. Heine serves them tea in return and says they need a lesson. He asks them what they will do if there's any criminal in the palace, or maybe he's that criminal. The princes think Heine is joking, and they all start laughing. The next day, Heine gathers the 4 princes and assigns them to investigate the claim that a criminal has entered the palace. They all go to the office to meet the person who wrote the article, but he's not there. They find him in many places. Finally, one day, Licht knows that he is coming tonight, and they follow him. They catch him, and Kai asks him why he wrote his article. He tells him that he was told to write it because he needed money, so he wrote it. Then they enter the library and read the record without King's permission. They read about Heine and how he tried to kill their father, but he was jailed. They go to his father and ask him about that. At first, he says nothing. Then he tells them his story. He was a prince and disarmed in the streets to know about the condition of his kingdom. Some children stole his watch, and he ran after them and met with Heine there. Heine looked at Luke, the leader of the small children. He lived with a lot of orphan children. Victor used to meet him every day and open his heart to him. One day, the guard shot Heine, but Victor took it, and the blame fell on Heine. After a few days, when Victor became conscious, he told King, and Heine was released. Victor became the king, and he built a church for orphans. Heine became their teacher. He did a lot. That's why the king appointed him as a royal tutor. All the princes are shocked and a bit ashamed. They ask the king why he didn't tell them before. King says he made a promise with Heine that if his party becomes public, he will leave the palace without saying a word. Then they stand up there. Heine has resigned from the position of royal tutor. The king says that Heine will resign, and tomorrow's his last lesson. He says, if anyone comes to know that they are groomed by a tutor with a criminal history, then it will harm their legacy on the throne. The next day, they go to Heine, and he asks them if they have completed their assignments. Then, what will they do if they learn that there's a criminal who slipped into a palace? They say he's not a criminal and they know about him. Heine asks them what they will do if they come to know about him as a king. Then he says he has not slipped, but he came there at the request of the king. Then he tells every prince about their excellence and says he will come there to groom them. They all have to become very empirical and stressful for the professor. They have to shine like a light on history, and his last lesson ends there. Then he goes and says he's no longer their professor. They are all sitting silent. The king comes to them and tells them the new royal tutor is coming in 2 days, but they are not happy. All the princes start working and the king addresses them. King comes to Heine in church and asks him to help him, and Heine agrees to join his palace as a royal tutor, because he's the one who fits for this job. He remembers his promise to spread equal knowledge. In the council, 4 princes say they want to appoint Heine as a royal tutor. Everybody does not agree because he has a criminal record, has no degree, and never goes to university. But the 4 princes stand still before them and remember Heine's words. They speak in council, and everyone claps to hear them.